I want to introduce you guys to kind of our three planters. And so we have Gavin Roberts, who is him and his brother Chase. Chase is in Morgan right now. Gavin is on his way to Morgan the next couple of months, Lord willing, if we can get everything kind of in line. And they're going to be kind of restarting a church that was in Morgan. Dustin Stopman is from Oklahoma, and he's planting a church in West Jordan, Hope Valley Church. And he's in the process of kind of building a team and kind of those early days. And Paul Campbell is a part of a team, lead planner in Logan. And again, these are three areas of incredibly high need. And so I want to kind of get each one of them to share a little bit about themselves. So Paul, why don't you start? Share a little about your family and about Logan, Utah.
So me and my wife, Abby, we have 4 children. And we moved from Virginia Beach out to Salt Lake City, Utah to be there for a year with a church called Gospel Grace Church, and where I serve currently as in a 1-year residency program with them. And they would like to plant a church in Logan, Utah, and they've asked me to come lead that church plant. So I was a youth pastor in Virginia Beach at the same church for about 11 years. We were members of that church for 13 years, right after we got married. And then we moved out to Utah. And so we're planting in Logan. Gospel Grace has 3 other guys that they're going to be sending with me as pastors. And they recently were ordained. Bobby was part of the ordination council, actually. They were recently ordained, and we're headed up to Logan. Logan is a small town with a major university. That's one of the things that's very attractive for us. So you think of the impact that you can have potentially quickly because of small town, but massively because there's a major university there called Utah State University. Go Aggies. I had to look up what an Aggie was, actually. Someone who attends an agricultural school, in case you're wondering. So we like that. It's situated in a valley, the Cache Valley, of about 150,000 people. And we think there's less than 1% Christian there. It's very LDS. There are not very many Christian churches at all in the valley there. So that was, we thought that would be a great place to be able to plant a church strategically. Utah State has about 20,000 students on campus. It's a very large campus. And we just purchased a home. We closed in January, and we're situated right in between downtown and Utah State. So we're very thankful for that. And the building that we're currently renting for our church plant is there as well. So we have a team of 4 pastors, along with, including them, there's 34 adults who have committed to move to Logan to be a part of this church plant. There's a handful from Virginia Beach, where we came from. We had a friend said, man, if you're going, we're going, And I'm actually in Greenville, South Carolina right now. So it's so ironic that Bobby asked me to be a part of this today with y'all from South Carolina. And here I am in South Carolina. There's a few families here in Greenville that are going to be moving out as well. There's obviously a handful of families that are going to be moving from Gospel Grace Church. And it's an hour and a half north of Salt Lake. So it means, moving. It means finding new jobs unless you're able to work remotely.
Thanks, Paul. All right, I want to introduce to you Dustin Stopman. Dustin, share with the group here a little about your family, where you're planting, West Jordan, kind of what's on the horizon for you guys.
Yeah, so as Bobby said, my name is Dustin, and my wife is named Sarah, and we have 2 daughters. We have Ellie, who is 10, and Sadie, who is 7. And up until this point, I have served in local churches in Oklahoma as a student pastor. And for me, I was always content in that calling and knew that that was a specific area that God had placed me. But what happened in our lives is over the last few years, God shifted that calling and began to really show us that He was moving us towards church planting work. And through a lot of different circumstances, He placed Utah on our hearts in the Salt Lake City area. He gave us a burden. And as we learn more and more about the extreme lostness here, as we learn more and more that statewide, less than 3% of the people are believers, which inversely means over 97% of the people here are lost. Man, that just grabbed us. And the more we wrestled with that, and as we came out and visited and all of those things, God just began to confirm over and over that this was a calling He had placed on our lives. And so for us, that looked like moving out here last July in the middle of everything COVID, and it meant that, you know, some plans looked different, but what the amazing thing was getting to see and continuing to see God's provision that many times, probably most of the time, looks different than we think it will, but that He is so active in that. And so we moved out here in July. West Jordan, Utah is a suburb in the Salt Lake Valley. It's a city of nearly 120,000 people. We're specifically on the west side of that city. So our zip code is about 60,000 people. It is fast growing. There is still undeveloped land on our side of the valley, and that is becoming a very sought after commodity as we're in a landlocked valley, and they're needing room to continue to build homes for the growth that's happening here. So it's about 60,000 in our zip code, continuing to grow. And within that, there are 0 evangelical churches. And what the vision and the way that God has called us to this area is with a heart that is very much for our neighbors, for our community, for implanting ourselves here and building a church based on the gospel of grace that is right here in this community, for this community, that is known by our neighbors. I'll share a real quick story of that. One of the ways we've jumped in is on a PTA board at our girls' school, and we get to give the little birthday goodies for the students and then also for the staff. And one of the things that we got to do a couple months ago, it was the principal's birthday. So my wife bought her favorite candy bar and wrote her a handwritten note. The next time that we had a PTA meeting, we're together in a room at the school. There's probably 15 people in the room. And the principal, with tears in her eyes, was sharing about this note and candy bar she received. And what an impact that made. And that stood out to us because it seemed pretty trivial, real honestly. But to see that how these things are not happening here. And for us, of being a blessing is one of our values as a church to our community, and knowing that we can be a blessing simply by living the gospel. That's not all we do, but simply by seeking to bless others around us. And to see how that emotionally grabbed her was so powerful for us. And we have a few other stories, even just recently, of a LDS gentleman that I've gotten to become friends with through some work that I've done in the school district, and helping with a vaccine clinic of all things that I've gotten to know this man, and our daughters are playing together this Saturday. And it was so touching for me, and I so appreciated getting to hear Dixie share, because our LDS friends and neighbors, as Bobby started out by saying, are some of the sweetest people I've ever met. They are great people. And they are not trying to sell everyone on a lie. They are believing a lie that they've been taught. They are genuine in this. And our desire is to love them with the truth of the gospel. And so church-wise, we are working towards a lot of things right now. As Bobby said, we have a lot actually going on right now with some team members and that are committing to join us, and others. Even we had some guys in town from Oklahoma this weekend who are seriously praying about being out here with us, and so really praying through a lot of those things right now, that God will bring those types of things into place. This summer, we have a full slate of mission teams that will be focused entirely on community outreach here in our neighborhoods, ministry in our parks, the neighborhoods around us, and then through that context, we'll begin some pre-launch Sunday evening services as we work towards our full official launch this fall. And so we covet your prayers and partnerships in whatever that might look like for you. We would love to have those conversations. Thank you, guys.
I'm Gavin Roberts, and married to my wife, Haley, for going on 6 years. I got a little girl named Finley. She's about to be 4, a little boy named William. Be planning with my twin brother, Chase. He's got a wife, Becky, and 3 kids, and we're pretty tight. He's bald and ugly and fat like me, and so we get along pretty good. We've spent our whole lives together working and doing just different things, and so we're excited to be doing that together. And both did our MDivs at Midwestern, Kansas City, and when we were there, we had a friend who was we're from Arkansas, Central Arkansas, and had a friend who's from Central Arkansas who was planting in Wyoming. And he was working on his PhD, and he was down for a seminar, and he took us to lunch and just kind of started talking to us about going out west. And so we'd spent time in South America, different places, and then talking to him about Wyoming. We love to hunt, fish, ski, hike, anything outside. We're about that. And he was kind of pitching Wyoming to us, and we started reading and thinking and praying. And a few years, they ended up going out and met Bobby on a kind of a vision tour. Just real laid back deal. He kind of showed us around, introduced us to some guys, and then saw Morgan. And Morgan, as Bobby mentioned, there was a plant there that just didn't work out, and so needed someone to come in there and kind of jump back in that ship and try to get it to roll. And so just realized that's where God would have us to be. And Morgan is a smaller town. It's Morgan County is the smallest county geographically in the state of Utah. About 12,000 folks, like these other 2 guys mentioned. Kind of the whole area is growing, so that probably won't stay that way long. But about 12,000 folks, and up until the last year, Morgan Grace was the only religious meeting of any kind, religious organization of any kind in the county, in the history of the county, actually, I believe. And there's an independent Baptist plant up in Mountain Green, a smaller community up in the north end of the county. So very much a lost area, just like these other guys are mentioning. And just kind of a rural town. If you're from, I don't know what parts of South Carolina you guys are in, but for me, where I grew up, a big town, it was if you had a Walmart. And so Morgan, to me, is a big town. They've got a Ford dealership and a grocery store and all those kind of things. A school, a couple 150 kids in a class. So it's not we don't mean a truck stop and that's it, but just not it's not Salt Lake City kind of deal. And so we're excited to be there. Just such a need. It's just a bunch of good old boys and good old gals, country folks like us that like what you've heard, just they're trying to do their best to get to heaven. They've been listening to too much Alan Jackson and eating cornbread and chicken and working hard to get to heaven. And we want to go there and preach the gospel to people that are so much like us, and I would guess like many of you, but just don't know Jesus. And there's not a church there, so we want to go be about that and preach the gospel and love people in Morgan County.
So some specific things for us right now, as I mentioned, we are still we have several people that are praying right now actively about being a part of the team and what we're doing here. Some of those people from out of state, some locally, and so we're praying with them. We know what we're praying God will do in them, but we want that to be clear to them. So that's definitely a prayer. Also pray as far as ways to partner with us. We certainly love mission teams. We have a pretty full summer already of mission teams. We have seven weeks that we'll have teams out here, and so we're pretty full on that regard for the summer. But we are definitely love people to come out here. And so if there's other times a year or looking towards next year, we would love those types of partnerships. We very much believe that Utah is a place that you have to see to understand, and to understand the culture here, but also to see the excitement that we have because of what we see God doing here in the midst of this. And so we would love to have you out. Financially, some specifics right now is we have quite a few kind of one-time purchase type needs right now as related to the equipment and things like that that's necessary as you think about a church plant meeting in rented space. We'll be meeting in a dance studio, which we are very excited about. It's going to be a great fit for what we need and where we want to be. So there's needs like that, things like trailer and sound equipment and children's ministry supplies and things like that that are kind of more one time. We also are still though praying for additional partners who can come alongside in a monthly support role as we think about the additional monthly needs as we look at actually launching our weekly services and ministries and outreaches and the expense that comes along with those things. And so there's certainly ways God has blessed through our partnership in the Send Network, through our sending church and other church partnerships across the country, and through just faithful individual Christians. God has so blessed us in seeing how he uses others to come alongside us. And one of the greatest ways that we're blessed in that is just seeing the faithfulness of other believers to be praying for us. And so we do not mention that lightly. We covet those prayers. And we would love to talk anyway about how we could partner together.
So I'm hadn't been around church planting a lot, but as a lead pastor near a seminary, and in my limited time around church planting, I have never met a church planter that couldn't use some funds. And so I think that no money kind of turns into a taboo thing, but it's just true. You got to have help, and I appreciate you guys even being on here and listening to us, and Bobby hooking us up to share with you guys. And so I intentionally left this out a while ago. That Morgan Gray. So we inherited, as he said, a church plant that just kind of never got off the ground, and so we already are having services. They're small, but having those. And so just with our core team, we've got about 3 families and a couple of single ladies, and then my family and my brother's family. We're really, with the space we have, are pretty limited. And so prayer requests, partnering, teams, all those things. Our a place to meet is somewhere that we could partner with people on that in very near future. Going to need to knock out some walls, do some things like that, just to have room for even just our small core team to have space to meet. So that would be a prayer request, but also potentially some ways some teams could serve with us in the near future. And then financially, just a little bitty thing. I just got a hold of a Right Now Media account for our church today, and it's pretty affordable, $30 a month, but just little things like that. And then eventually, this is maybe a little bit of a far out goal, but to really grow, as we said, not only to expand that building, but then even to that meeting space, but also maybe to purchase some land to build a place one day. Is something that we think would be really important. In talking with Bobby and other people, that to kind of be, hey, like we're part of this community, is to have our actual own location in town. And we always need your prayers, and just up from my kids, my daughter, as Bobby said, I'm not there yet. My daughter, she doesn't want to leave her house. She doesn't understand why we're leaving Arkansas and the farm and all the things that we have here. And my brother's wife, they've got friends out there, but just I think that as somebody mentioned earlier, it can be, I think for me, it's a little easier to say, hey, this is what we're called to. We're going to do this. But, my wife and my kids, just to remember them, and we're leaving. We're from Arkansas. We're on the farm we grew up on, kind of thing, and all that. And so just to remember them, and my wife and my children, and then Chase and his wife and his children, were just in, 1,500 miles from Central Arkansas. Nothing that missionaries don't do, but still a hard thing that God works through prayer to bring us through.
And just pray for our kids, as has been mentioned. So another way you could pray for our team, our launch team, is that we would be unified. You think about people coming from different parts of the country and different churches, different church background. They're going to have different kinds of expectations. presuppositions on what a church ought to be and ought to look like. And so just pray that we be unified. It's one reason why I'm going to be preaching and teaching through the pastoral epistles this summer. In 1 Timothy 3, the Apostle Paul says, I'm writing these things so you may know how to conduct yourself in the household of God. The church, which is the pillar and buttress of the truth. And a side note there, my second born is named Pillar. We named her after that text, actually, as a reminder of our need for the church. And so that if you would pray that we would be unified through humility, like we see in Philippians chapter 2, unified through humility, diversity, but unity. So definitely pray for that. Ways that you guys could help support us financially and with people. We do a mission trip, a kind of event, if you will, called Plant Camp every summer. And Plant Camp is, we have 4 different weeks. So in our family of churches that we have, for Plant for the Gospel is the family of churches that we have. Gospel Grace Church is, and you can look this up on plantcampslc.com, plantcampslc.com. But there's Gospel Grace Church, who we're planting from. Gospel Grace Church helped revitalize a church that's now called Gospel Hope Church. And then we're going to be called Gospel Peace Church up in Logan. So there's 1 week that's dedicated to Gospel Grace Church in the summer. There's 1 week dedicated to Gospel Hope Church. And there's 2 weeks, because we're brand new, dedicated to Gospel Peace Church up in Logan. So you can get more information there at plantcampslc.com, or Plant for the Gospel is with the number 4.com as well. Financially, we are, our family has been raising support to be full-time supported outside of Utah. And we're at about 87% of our needed support for that. And I sent you our website there. You can learn more about us there. And we're also, so we're close. We're living off of some significant one-time gifts that have been given to us. So we're thanking the Lord for that. We're doing okay, doing fine, especially after purchasing a home, which is really expensive out here. So we're doing fine right now. Thank the Lord for that. But also we're kind of shifting our support raising to raising support for Gospel Peace Church. So you'll see that on our website as well. And so we're looking to raise about $3,000 a month for support, regular ongoing support. We had been raising support for like one-time startup gifts, but we've exceeded our goal significantly for that. So we're praising the Lord for that already. And yeah, so we have, like I said, we have 3 other guys that are going to be moving up there with us to be pastors. And I'd like to see one of those guys come on in January as a full-time supported guy. His name is John Moon, and he is raising support as well. And we'd like the church to be able to support him for some of that as well, if the Lord would provide in that way. So he's a very gifted preacher and teacher, and so he'll take a lot of kind of the Sunday school hour. We call it Gospel Growth Hour, but kind of the Sunday school hour. He'll be teaching a lot at that time. So I think it's important to be able to provide for those who preach and teach. So yeah, so that'd be a few ways.